Hello, so today we're going to talk about some books that I would recommend for the end of the year if you need some good recommendations to put a bow on your year, to finish up your reading year. So what I did was in my TBR video for November, I mentioned that this was one of the videos that I plan on filming, and I asked for what you look for in your end of the year books, and I built this recommendation list around that. Also though, because we're still in the same season as the fall autumn books recommendation that I did in October, naturally when y'all mentioned what you wanted to see for the end of the year books, there was a lot of crossover. There were a lot of books that I could have repeated for this video. So because of that, I've challenged myself. I am not repeating any books. There were a couple of books that I immediately put on this list and then immediately took off because I realized that I just recommended it in my recommendation video last month and I don't want to be really repetitive. So I do recommend checking out that video if you're really hurting for some recommendations, because I had something like 20 books on that list, and this list is going to be much shorter. I have 4 categories that were specifically requested from people, and I have 2 books per category, and because the last recommendation video was quite full and most of it was applicable for this video, I've also extended it to talking about books that I have read and highly recommend, and books that I plan on reading here in the next couple of months and you might like to check out as well. Finally, the last way that I've structured this video is at the beginning of the video. The recommendations are going to be more standard types of books that I would recommend any time of year, and then as the list goes on, we're honing in on the more seasonal, Christmassy, wintry kind of books. So all that preamble out of the way, the first recommendation that was requested of me, the first category that we're going to be discussing, is large books, which is the exact opposite of what I expected to be asked for an end of the year video, but the commenter said that they like to, in the winter season, like to cozy up with a really big book. So I am recommending a big series with a lot of big books. Actually, both of my recommendations in this category are that. Starting with The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. Now, I have not talked about this series in a long time, and I love these books so much. The first one is called The Grace of Kings, and this story starts off after a dynasty has been conquered and these many islands are being united under one banner, and now the people are rebelling and they're starting a revolution to get their autonomy back, to not have their culture in many ways snuffed out, and also under an emperor who has ruled very brutally. So this is a dynasty. This is a vast, sprawling epic. Like, when I think of a fantasy epic, I think that this series is the first and greatest that comes to mind. In the midst, that's too hard to say. Wait, I have too many great epics. I don't care. This is the first one that comes to mind, and I feel that it feels fitting for the winter season, in my opinion. I loved book 1. I loved all of these books, but easily The Wall of Storms is one of the greatest books that I've read, and they're all fantastic, but books 1 and 4 especially just, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What did I say? I meant 2 and 4. I don't know what I said. It probably wasn't that though. And that is a completed series, and the next series that I'm recommending to you is about to be completed. You could guess it. It's the Stormlight Archive, book 1 being The Way of Kings. I'll talk about this one less because it's far more popular, at least on BookTube, and I think in general, than Dandelion Dynasty, so it probably needs less of a pitch, but there are 4 very large novels currently out, and the next book, the final of the first arc of the Stormlight Archive, is coming out in December, so now's a good time. I forgot to transition to the next category. The next category is short books. Next up, I'm going to recommend A Letter from an Unknown Woman. Now, in the last video, I said I wouldn't recommend Zweig, but I didn't make that promise in this video. This is a book that I've talked about a few times. Actually, it's a short story. It's only like 30 or 40 pages long. It's very short, but it's very dreary. And because of that, I feel it's a bit more fitting for this season. So this starts off with a character opening up a letter from an unknown woman, to the point it's someone that he doesn't know, and when the letter starts, he actually checks the postage to make sure, is this actually addressed for me or is this addressed for someone else? And then he goes on to read the letter, and it's her telling him her story of obsession, basically. It's her explaining to him when she fell in love with him, or I think the idea of him, and how she put herself in his way all throughout her life in order to just have a moment with him, but also trying to keep herself out of his way so that she's never so much as a burden of him. It's a very sad depiction of obsession taken to its largest degree, and this letter is written by her at the end of her life, and she just wants him to know what he was to her, what she's kept from him all this time, and that she's the one that's been sending him flowers every year. So this, again, is very, very short, but it's a great pick because one, again, dreary, but two, there's a live stream between me and Amber Elise where she did not like it. She didn't hate it as much as she's hated other picks by me, but she did not love it, and I do. And so no matter where you stand, if you hate this book, if you love this book, there is a stream where you will be represented. And then my next recommendation, the first one on this list where I have not actually read the book yet, is The Answer is No by Fredrik Backman. This is being released in December. This is also one of my favorite authors. Wow, this whole list so far has been nothing but favorites. Oh, what a great list. Fredrik Backman is one of my favorite authors, and this is the short story that he is releasing in December. I think it's like 50 pages. Let me check. It says it's a hilarious short story by Fredrik Backman. The absurdities of modern life cause one man's solitary world to spin suddenly and comically out of control. So it looks like this is following someone who has a very consistent routine, and that routine is terribly and hilariously disrupted. I don't know anything else. I know that my friend who also loves Fredrik Backman got an early copy of this and loved it, so I feel confident that I will too. Next category is going to be romance. We had someone who mentioned that they get in the romance mood every year at the end of the year, so I have two picks for you on that as well. One that I've read, one that I haven't. First one that I've read is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. This is a Groundhog Day story. May. It's been 3 years, so I had to check on the main character's name. If it had been 3 months, I still would have had to check. May is, so she has a best friend, and then there's also his brother who is her lifelong crush, I'm pretty sure. And she ends up agreeing to going to this cabin with them for the holiday. I think she does it every year, if I'm remembering correctly, but it doesn't go well. She makes a big mistake, and so then she makes this wish after this big mistake, wishing to be able to set it right somehow. And what ends up happening is a Groundhog Day scenario where she goes back to this again, and she keeps replaying this over and over again, I think until she can get it right. Again, been about 3 years. I just remember thinking that this was unbelievably charming. I tend to be difficult with romances. It's not my preferred genre, and I'm really, really picky. And this one just worked for me. I thought it was really sweet. I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. I thought that there was enough going on in the big family dynamic and in the different conflicts that they were having that I never got bored. There was so much for me to focus on other than just this romance thing. And when it finally, the slow burn finally led up to them the romance actually starting, I was actually invested instead of feeling like everything was happening too fast. I feel like I said actually so many times in that sentence, but I'm not going to retake it. I enjoyed this a lot. And the other one that I'm recommending for a romance within the holiday season is one that I haven't read yet because I haven't read very many, but it was already on my list, and it's called You Make It Feel Like Christmas. This one was recommended to me by Instagram. Actually, I was watching an Instagram reel recommending a bunch of holiday romances, and my library had this one, so I just got it, and now I have it to read. And I plan on reading it in December. I think it was about, it was about a girl who I've forgotten the name of, shocker, who is going home for the holidays because her sister is having a Christmas Eve wedding with her ex-boyfriend. But then her best friend's brother is also there, and that's who the romance is between. That's two best friends brother romances in one list. Whoops, didn't do that on purpose. What are you gonna do? The final category for this video is winter. This is books set at winter, and these are my most seasonal holiday ones yet. So we're gonna start with Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. So this is a collection of letters that Tolkien wrote to his kids from Father Christmas every year. The tradition in his household was that every year there would be a letter written in this sprawling handwriting, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, from Father Christmas talking about his life in the North Pole, and he would read it with his kids each year. And so you have an actual copy of the letter or the illustrations, as well as a transcript of it written in a little bit more readable font, which as a dyslexic I very much appreciate. But there are so many stories and so many wonderful illustrations. It is a book chock full of gold, in my opinion, so I highly recommend this, and it's something that's a little bit more abstract for these types of recommendations, so I wanted to get this one in before I do my last recommendation, which is A Christmas Carol. I considered other things, but it had to be this one. I didn't read this book in school. I read this for the first time as an adult, and what a delight it was. I'm sure you've heard of it, so I won't waste your time telling you about the plot of it. I'll just say that if you haven't read it, if you've made it into adulthood and you still haven't read this book, or you haven't read it since childhood, I do recommend it as an adult, because I do think that it is a book that is not dependent on nostalgia and is still well worth the read. At least it was for me. So that's my list of 8 recommendations for good books for the end of the year. I hope you found something on this list that interests you if you were looking for a recommendation. If you weren't looking for a recommendation and your list is already full, thanks for watching anyway. And please feel free to let me know in the comments if there's anything that you plan on reading from this list that you have read and you want to talk about a little bit, or any recommendations that you have that you would like to offer for the end of the year. Please do chat with me more in the comments. I'll see you again soon. Bye.